Hello, everyone. To those just tuning in, welcome. To those who've been checking out sessions throughout the day, welcome back. We hope you're enjoying the content and looking forward to more awesome presentations coming up. A big thank you to our partners and speakers for helping us deliver a fantastic program. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Happy viewing.
So first of all, thanks, Rania, for a great talk. I quite enjoyed that, considering I'm somebody who is living in Copenhagen but working in London on a weekly basis. So I understand how important it is to have a great remote working habit, so thanks very much for that. I will spend the next probably 20 minutes or so talking to you about something which is very dear to me, which is how do you actually plan the releases of your products? All of you are rockstar product managers. But I hope that I can share a few insights that I had through my experience. So a bit about myself. This screen is kind of flickering, but I guess you guys can see this. So I have about 20 years or so experience in building and shipping software. The last 10 years have been in SaaS services. I'm kind of like a half millennial, where I spent the first half of my career with setup.exe and the other half of my career with Bash script. And like, how many of you know what a setup.exe is? Yes, see, that's exactly the point, right? So actually running, many of you are quite young, many of you grown up with SaaS services, but actually running setup of a DVD, running on-prem software is very different from planning and shipping SaaS applications. I decided to spend my time mostly in business applications because I thought that that's where the impact on our life is most significant. If you think about how much time we spend in work, how much time we spend with our colleagues every day, and the way software impacts that's really actually a very profound impact on our lives. And I decided to commit my career to making that better. I worked across different backgrounds and different contexts. I had a number of startups at the beginning of my career. I had 2 successful startup exits, which was great. And I had a very successful startup failure, which I've driven into the ground. And I actually think that those failures are certainly the most forming moments. I remember those times, and I remember how deflated I felt. I felt like a failure because the company was a failure. And I felt also responsible and ashamed towards the staff in my company because effectively all lost their jobs at the end of it. But actually those moments are the most forming moments. And as a matter of fact, the failure that I had was the thing that made me who I am today and really totally formed my character the way I am today. And I learned most from those type of experiences. So if you have failures, that's actually quite good. I spent then over a decade in a company you may have heard of called Microsoft, where I spent 12 years running global business application services for Dynamics SMB, for the SMB space in Dynamics 365. And that's a kind of interesting experience because I thought across these startups that I did, I felt that I had to go somewhere where I can really learn how it's properly done. And you know what? It was Microsoft. It could have been Google. It could have been Amazon. It could have been Facebook. And I felt that I had to be part of a bigger thing and really understand how products are properly designed, built, and shipped. And I thought that was going to be like University 2.0 for me, but maybe a couple of years. Next thing you know, I'm 12 years there. Just recently, I left Microsoft last year, and I joined a company called Zellis, where I'm now in the capacity of the Chief Product and Technology Officer for the company. We're about 2,000 people. So a bit about Zellis, just to get a bit of background, what I do. It's a company that's been founded in 1963. Known as NGA Global, Northgate Arinso Payroll Services. And recently, last year, acquired by Bain Capital, a private equity firm, and acquired another company called Benefix, which Bain Capital joined together into the entity we are today, which is Zellis. If you think about what we do, we are, by numbers, a clear market leader. We have about 1,200 major large accounts in the UK and Ireland. Every month, we pay about 5 million people, so 1 of 6 of you here in this room are probably paid by Zellis. We have a lot of interaction with customers in the segment. 33% of FTSE 100 companies are served by us. And that's all great, but we're not satisfied with that. We want to grow it even more and change those experiences even further. And that's one of the reasons why I joined. Back at Microsoft, when I left Microsoft, this is one of the last slides I presented at one of the major conferences. And this is the product that I was responsible at the time. And these numbers also hopefully show some quite successful growth that we had. 222% growth in partners selling the product, 67% growth month over month in North America, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, we were actually signing up 2 customers every minute when we were selling with Office 365. So we obviously had experienced a lot of scale in building and shipping products. And the reason why I was very happy to accept this invitation to talk to you today is I've learned something through these things. I learned something from my failures, but I learned some best practices through the process of actually building and shipping software products at scale. So I'd like to share that with you. If we think about the general process of building and shipping products, it kind of goes from left to right in a standard sort of build a product and then write some acceptance test-driven development around that. As you build your first version of the product, your minimum viable product, then you start refining it. And as you refine it, you need to define sort of success criteria. So when you're going to stop refining it, because you can refine any product forever. And then finally, you do the big launch and you ship it, which means you provide some marketing collateral and write a press release to define to the market, to tell everybody why this product is great. And as you launch the product, as you ship it, then you want to promote it. You want to actually tell the world about it. You want to build a website presence, an online presence. We define your mission statement through that product and tell the world why is it great and why do you exist. And finally, and last but not the least, there's the exit pitch. There's actually the selling of the business and committing that business to a new owner and going through that process. And to do that, you have to write a really good exit pitch to effectively sell the value of the company. One thing to realize is that every business is for sale sooner or later. Even if you're a privately owned business, unfortunately, none of us live forever. So every business is eventually for sale, and every business is at some point going to go through an exit pitch. So this is how you typically build software, and this is how you typically execute. Now, there's variations of that, of course, but this is how I typically execute. The thing that I'm here to share with you, and was a big aha for me in the last decade or so of building and shipping software, is that the way you execute should not be the way you plan. And the way you plan should actually go in the completely opposite direction. The way you should plan is to be planning backwards. And hence the title of this presentation. So actually, I claim, and in my experience, that the best thing to do is to start by literally writing the exit pitch for a software business. So the way you plan should be the exact opposite direction of how you execute. So you should write the exit pitch. You should, from the exit pitch, distill the mission statement. Then you should write press releases for the releases you ship. You should define the success criteria for the different epics in those releases and eventually write ATDD, right? Kind of the opposite direction of the way people typically do it. And the reason why I say this is the following. I'll go through all of these in a few minutes to just give you a little bit of insight why I think this is so important. So let's start with the exit pitch. The way to think about an exit pitch is really to think about the situation where you're standing in front of the new potential buyer, and from the sales side, you're presenting that company to the buyers and saying, this is why this company is great. This is why it's valuable. This is why you should basically give us a lot of money so we can give you the company. And in order to do that, you need to understand a lot of things. You need to understand the context. And even today, in the job that you're doing today, you need to understand what will be the potential context on which the business will be sold. That impacts your work as product manager massively, more than you probably think. Just a quick raise of hands. How many of you are clearly knowledgeable of the equity structure of the business you're working for? Like, you know who owns the business, whether it's private equity, public business? Quite a few. Okay, that's not bad. The reason why this is important to know is because the way you exit the business is going to impact how you plan the business. So for example, in Zellis, we are Bain Capital owned, and we know that private equity companies typically have exits within 3 to 5 years, which means that I know that there's no chance we can build some major frameworks, invest in major refactorings without a clear in-year outcome on those investments, because that would effectively sink the P&L for the business and make that investment unsuccessful for owners. That impacts how we plan how we coordinate the efforts. If you are in a privately owned business that you own yourself, you need to start thinking about what am I here for? Why am I doing this? Why is this important to me as the owner and the manager, the leader of this company? Just as an example, recently I've been involved in a couple of cases where they asked me to consult through the selling process. One was actually a friend of mine, and they managed to successfully sell a company which is a merger from an American-European company, and through that process, made a lot of money. And it was a really interesting process. I don't know if any of you have been through this process, but it's always a really interesting process where there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of emotions being invested. There's a lot of anxiety. Am I going to get the right price for the business? And the interesting thing about that was at the end, they managed to get a really great price for the business and effectively became really rich. But the interesting thing happened after that. That person came to me afterwards and said, I didn't expect I was going to feel this way. I feel empty. I feel like I lost my identity. I've been working this business for the last decade or so, and now, frankly, I've been working up to this moment, and I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself now. And I said, okay, look, I know you have enough money to fulfill your time, so why don't you go buy yourself some materialistic pleasures and see how you feel, which he did. But 2 weeks later, of course, he came back and said, well, you know what, I still feel lost. So a really interesting thing is this person had a mission of an exit, but never had a personal mission to understand why this whole motion is important to them. And that's why you need to start to plan from that. Another case is a business that I'm consulting where the owner is late age. And he actually had a great pleasure in owning the business and building a community out of his business, like a family. And now he's at a point where he wants to stop working, but he doesn't have a clear exit plan with it. And it's a very successful business, but he also doesn't have that plan. And that's what I'm saying. If you're going to start thinking about product management, you need to start about thinking about the time horizon, your equity structures of business. You need to think about the potential buyers of the business, and you from the sales side, how will you present that in order to understand what your constraints are in the way you plan the business. And the way to do it is to write the exit pitch. I'm not going to read this out for you. You probably read a bit of it. And this is kind of like a mock version of our zealous exit pitch. It's too early for that. But the idea is to kind of describe how you've changed the world. What impact did you make? Put in some percentages and numbers to see what you want to strive for. Let those be your leading KPIs of your product success, even before you start designing a product, to understand really what are you heading for? What is your goal? And the most important thing about that is, the last line I have there is, what are you prepared not to accomplish, to accept that you will not do, because there's always something you'll fail at. So you might as well tease out what that may be from the very beginning, right? So that's the exit pitch. So once you've written the exit pitch, of course, this will be a document about a page or so. You can't really walk around every day reading that because it's probably a bigger document. The next thing you should do is define your mission statement. And the mission statement is really a distilled version of your exit pitch. The mission statement is a statement for you and your company, or the division of the company we work in, of why do you exist? Like, why do you show up at work every day? And it could be to make a salary, it could be to get rich, like some friends that I have. It could be for whatever reason, but it needs to be something that you can really anchor yourself in and understand why do we exist. So when we actually joined Zealous, and most of the management team at Zealous is new, a recruiter from the industry, very quickly we kind of started looking at companies saying, look, we don't want to be a payroll company. Payroll is seen as something that basically takes money from a company and puts it in the employee's account. We couldn't find something so excited about it to be motivated. And we realized that by acquisition of Benefix and all the assets we have, that our mission statement was really to make people feel appreciated for the work they do. Now that's a different statement. That doesn't go to describe what you do, but what kind of emotional impact you have on the customers. And a great mission statement will always have that. The great mission statement will always be able to explain, when you talk to your customers, what impact does your company have on those customers, or at least the desired impact it has on those customers. The way to do it is make it brief, make it clear, understandable. Don't try to make a marketing statement. Great company slogans are fantastic, like Rolex, we don't tell time, we tell history. Mask, your promise delivered. Those are great marketing statements, but are not clear. Your mission statement needs to be very clear so you can continuously return to it and double check that what you're doing is really fulfilling that mission statement. So write an exit pitch from the beginning. Write a mission statement is really a distilled version of the exit pitch, and make that your North Star of your business continuously to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And now we get to sort of more tangible things, which is as we get to shipping releases. So this is one of those things that I've put in practice across this whole program, and put in practice in every single organization where I worked in, which is that whenever we would ship a release, and whether you're shipping a release, when I say shipping a release, I don't mean shipping a physical release of the software, pushing it through DevOps. I'm talking about shipping a release that you want to tell a market about, like those big moments of time we want to accomplish something. Again, we would always work backwards for that. So for example, with Zealous, we're shipping major releases of the software every 6 months. So every 6 months ahead of time, we're writing a mock press release. So we're writing a press release as if we are 6 months later, and we're writing to the press release to describe what we're trying to accomplish and what we will tell the market when we ship this release 6 months later in that point in time. I cannot emphasize enough how important this part is. Now, what are you going to write, release notes or press releases or internal memos or bullet points? It doesn't really matter. But the point is you start again from the end. You start by saying, what does it want to accomplish at the end of this period, and then fold everything back into that. When you do that, you accomplish a number of different things. Within a very fairly short period of time, whether it's 6 months, 3 months, or 1 week, you actually focus the organization what outcomes you want to drive in the market rather than what you want them to do. So you say, when we ship this, this is what's going to happen in the market. This is the impact that's going to have on the people in the market. It also has another really incredible effect that I found is it actually allows people very easily to solve prioritization discussions. Because it's very easy for any product to come up with 1,000 ideas that are great ideas what you want to build in the product. What's really hard is to understand what you're not going to do. So if you 6 months ahead of time, or before you release rather, agree what the press release says, you're implicitly also agreeing on the things that are not in that press release that you're comfortable that that press release doesn't cover, which really quickly and very rapidly resolves any prioritization discussions you have in the company. Should this be in and out? Does it fulfill the press release? Yes or no? Fairly easy. And it's not always that black and white, but certainly facilitates that discussion. If you look at this, again, mock press release that we've written about total rewards, it's literally written as if it's published to the market by a PR team. And we even put in things like mock quotes from mock customers describing what impact the release had on them when they consumed the release. So the same way your exit pitch is where you start from, and then your mission statement is a continuous corporate or company North Star, your press release is another sort of guide point for the investments you do in a particular period when you're actually shipping the release. A few backwards from there, the way we work then is we take every press release we've written, which is usually no more than 2 or 3 pages, and what we do then, we actually distill that press release backwards and define the epics that will fulfill that press release. So we look at a press release and say, what are the epics we need to plan to put on the backlog? How should we prioritize them in order for this press release to become true? As we do that, we also then start writing the epics backwards again. So we don't start writing the epics by saying, what should the user experience be? We start writing about what should the success criteria be. And we start writing things like you see here, employees can see their payment rewards on the same screen, employees can understand and pay rewards appropriate for all the in, et cetera, et cetera. So we actually really write down a clear and succinct success criteria defining for each epic, when is that epic finished? When is the definition of done reached? And some of the guidances here is to write it in a measurable and binary way. So for example, a great success criteria would be, we're going to improve performance by 30% on this particular scenario. A not so great success criteria is, it's going to run faster. So you need to write in a way where you can have a statement you can always do a binary check on and say, okay, is this true or not? If it's true, then it's done. We move forward and move on to the next thing. From the success criteria and epics, we then, of course, define individual features, user stories, and tasks. And this is probably the stuff that you're quite familiar with, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But this is really about ATDD and acceptance test-driven development to say, like, what does it need to come true on a specific feature level in order to close a particular task, in order to move on and finish the rest of the implementation of the epic. So, what I'm trying to tell you here is that there's an age-old wisdom around building and planning software, or building and planning any project, which is, stop planning it backwards. The work-back plan, as people refer to it. So this is nothing really revolutionary and new, but I think that most people are actually not doing it. And if you start doing it this way, it would actually give you a really clear understanding of the broader context you're in. What is your context of the exit of the company? What does success look like for shareholders? It will give you a context of what's your mission, what's really the reason you exist, where are you heading as a company, and you can always double check that. In individual iterations, it gives you clarity and vision of what you want to accomplish when that release is shipped into the market through press releases. And then individual items that contribute to those releases and to that mission statement, you have, again, backwards defined clarity around the success criteria, and of course the testing you need to execute first, or write first, before you actually start writing code. So with that, a couple of points to remember. Plan backwards, execute forwards. Understand the wider context of the success of your business. Make the broader context continuously visible and have it on your mind. That third point is really important, because even when you understand the broader context of the business, say you write the exit pitch first, people forget what that conversation was 6 months later. So that's what a mission statement is incredibly important, because it always gives you that sounding board to check if you're on target or if you're not. And just for example, last night, my CEO and I had dinner, and we were talking about some number of different ideas for Zealous. And throughout the process, we kind of checked each other a number of times, saying, are these ideas really making people feel appreciated for the work they do? Because if they're not, then it's not on what we want to accomplish. View your product from outside in, from the market and user's perspective. And this is that customer centricity that everybody talks about. It's such a repeated word. But at the end of the day, it really is about that. Software and technology is complex and exciting and risky, and it will bite you when you least expect it. So we all get very easily drawn into the whole world of building and shipping software. But actually, in doing so, we sometimes forget that it's really about the impact we have on the users in the market. So whatever you do, always have that outside-in view in how you plan and design software. And last thing, but certainly not the least, is about involving the organization. The mistake I've made a couple of times in my leadership roles that I had was meet up with a leadership team, come up with a great plan. We all sort of high-five each other. It's amazing. We're going to rock this thing. It's going to be the best thing ever. And then we agree upon it and don't tell anybody else about it. And the rest of the organization is kind of in vacuum and wondering, what is these guys really talking about? I'm exaggerating, but not unlike that. It's really important that you actually involve the organization from bottom up in this process to get the people to contribute to each stage of this process. Now, of course, due to some sensitivities, you might not have every single employee of your company participate in writing the exit pitch, but at least in terms of the mission statement, in terms of the success criteria, in terms of press releases, the more people from your organization you build in from bottom up, the stronger your collective vision of success is going to be. Because ultimately, you build culture top down from the leaders, but you build empowerment from bottom up. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you can put some of this to practice. Thanks very much. All right, how to communicate the exits internally. Yeah, that's actually quite on that point I just recently made, which is, there are sensitivities about it. Clearly, you cannot share the full private equity business case with every single person in the organization, or your VC investment structure with every single person in the organization. But there are some high-level points around that you can distill, which are key points which may not have to do with any of the sensitivities in those documents, such as, we want to achieve this type of success in 3 to 5 years, or such as, we will not do so and so. So I think that alignment, even at that highest level, would be very beneficial for every person in the organization at any level. How do you plan for exit if you're working in a huge organization such as Microsoft as a product manager responsible for part of the product? Excellent question. You don't, because it's a publicly traded company, so unless somebody's planning to buy Microsoft, which I'm not aware of, it's pretty hard to plan for that. But what you do is you have the broader context of Microsoft in this particular example, or any publicly traded company, is basically being bought every day. As a matter of fact, every minute. It's being bought and sold continuously in the stock market, which makes you wonder then what's the broader context of that company being bought and sold. And that's one of the transformations we saw in Microsoft from Steve Ballmer to Satya Nadella, where Satya Nadella, when he actually joined, he was very clear about that our shareholders' price and value of the company is going to depend only on cloud first and mobile first. And that sort of broader context and direction of vision empowered a lot of us to also align our vision of what success looks like in the daily work that we do. By starting at the end, how do you avoid solutionizing, prescribing how you're going to build up front as opposed to testing assumptions, etc. Yeah, so what I'm talking about here is not a waterfall approach where you sort of design, build, test, and ship. Of course, it's interesting because as much as we applied Agile, and we're all hyper-Agile and all that stuff, at the end of the day, you have to have some sort of direction. You can't just sort of start prioritizing the backlog purely on randomly put together items. So the key to that is really to avoid technology definitive statements, to avoid user experience definitive statements, and rather, I think it was bullet point 4, focus on the impact you have on the users in the market rather than the actual technologies and work you're going to do. If you do that, it gives you enough freedom to make non-definitive statements about solutions and how you implement. What is the biggest challenge being both the CPO and CTO? Your title. Nobody can pronounce it. It's complicated. I actually think that those two roles invariably belong together. I think that you need to have a single person who is in charge of understanding how to deliver products to the market. As a matter of fact, I would even say that modern CPO roles are really intrinsically CTO roles as well. Now, there are companies we have those roles separate, and you can choose to make that choice, but personally, I personally feel most comfortable with understanding both the engineering and the product impact in the market. But starting at the end and working backwards, how do you accommodate changing requirements and new information as you develop products? Similar comment to previous one on the agility of the approach. Look, by having a plan doesn't mean that you can't change it. So we've changed press releases in the past. We've reprioritized the backlog. We haven't changed our mission statements, but at least you have a starting point from which you start. And a big part of one of the 7 principles of product flow and Agile is accepting agility. And the first part of accepting agility is being comfortable with changing stuff. So the fact that you have something defined doesn't mean that it needs to stay like that. It just means it's the current known version of the truth. We can then adjust as you move along and thereby adjust the product scope and everything else that follows. I think the last question I have, are you updating the exit pitch or the mission if something important changes in the way? I think in a similar fashion, the answer is yes. Agility is extremely important. We need to be able to react to the changes in the market, in the workplace, in the product discoveries. That doesn't go to say you cannot plan and think ahead. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is Marko Peresic. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn.